guys, it's Dani. Alrighty, today it's not the 1st of October, it's the 2nd, but we will still recap the orchids that we had in bloom in the month of September. And as many of you might already know, some of the orchids will just be presented with their flowers in vases or jars, but they were in bloom. These dendrobiums were some of my favorites and they still deserve your vote. So if you're new to my channel, let me just say this really fast. You can actually vote for your favorite orchid in bloom this month if you followed the link in the description, which leads you to a straw poll. And at the end of the year, we're gonna make this sort of popularity contest. The orchid you guys enjoyed the most throughout the year, pretty much your favorite orchid in my collection. We did it last year, it was fun, and last year the Rachara Frances Fox won. We'll see if this year she can win again. So every month you guys need to vote for your favorite one if you think this is fun, if you want to participate. So with that said, let's see which orchids we had in bloom in September 2018. So first, let's start with a Cattleya. She was residing outside as well, and thankfully she did not sustain any damage. And for the flower she has, I am pretty surprised but thankful. I purchased this orchid with the name Bc.Hippodamia, but now I have serious doubts. I do believe she's a Hippodamia crossed back with an aclandiae. I purchased her from Cattleya too, and well, since he's not a nursery, he's been known to mislabel an orchid here and there, so I'm not surprised. Judging by the photos on the internet, no, she's not a pure Hippodamia. I think she is a Hippodamia crossed back with a aclandiae. So you guys can Google and see the pictures and let me know what do you think about it. I am almost convinced it's not a Hippodamia. Anyway, maybe these details don't matter as much. I'm not interested in entering my orchids in contests or making all sorts of hybrids and so on. But anyway, take a look at this flower. I purchased her last year and she did have 2 buds, but I don't remember the flower being as big. So maybe this year, because we only have 1 flower, one of the buds just dropped as it was forming. Maybe because we only have 1 flower, it put a lot of energy into it and made it this big. I don't know, but I absolutely love the show. And I really do like the colors of this orchid. The sepals and petals are this really lovely green, which is a color not very commonly found in the hobby, so I'm thankful for that. I love the dotted pattern. I think everything just looks so wild. It's a sort of leopard print type of thing, which I'm not a fan of usually, but in orchids it kind of works. And the slip is just such a statement. It is magenta, vivid, broad, really pops when you look at this orchid from a distance. And because of the size, of course, there's no way you're gonna miss this orchid if she's in bloom. One thing I don't really enjoy about this orchid is the growth pattern. She's the type of very unruly Cattleya, produces kind of curly type of pseudobulbs, kind of pending, kind of, I don't know how to even explain it. She's not a very tidy type of Cattleya, and this is a trait of the aclandiae, which has these tendencies as well. You can see it doesn't really look like a Brassivola at this point, and maybe because she has a more aclandiae in her parentage, but what to do? She's gonna take up a lot of space on the shelf, and that is that. I think the flower is worth it though. We also have a fragrance, which is hard to describe. It smells sweet, but an artificial type of sweet. I cannot say it's flowery or fruity in any way. I do, however, see a resemblance between the fragrance of this one and the Jungle Eyes that I have, which is another aclandiae hybrid. So I'm guessing that if you've ever smelled an aclandiae, I think that's about it. That sweet, maybe a little powdery type of fragrance. It's not a very mouth-watering one, but definitely it's there, it's pretty enjoyable, and it's not overpowering. It will definitely not fill up a room. You only sense the fragrance if you really get close to smell the orchid. This is one of those orchids which does not create a sheath, at least for me, it never did. It might have a little remain here, maybe this is because of the Brassivola influence, but I don't believe it is a sheath-producing orchid, which is nice because it just blooms faster, and the flower spike developed within a month or so, so she is a pretty fast grower. The flower is exquisite in my opinion, but the orchid is absolutely unruly and it will just take a lot of space on the shelf. From one leopard print orchid to another, this is a Miltonia, and it's the beautiful Peter Komp. This orchid I actually made a video on, I think. It's an orchid I purchased more than a year ago, and it had a really severe case of setback. I was not sure if she will ever bounce back, but she did, and she did so really fast. I'm gonna show you the pseudobulb. But it managed to bloom, and it created a really pretty bloom display actually. I didn't stake this orchid, I didn't train it to grow straight, it just did. The flower spike just grew very straight. However, the flowers kind of face each direction just randomly. Again, I didn't move this orchid, I didn't contribute to this display. Maybe it's just something in her genetics. I suspect it does bloom pretty straight, not pendant, and the flowers have this tendency to just face whichever way they want, but that's okay. As beautiful as this orchid is, and mind you, right now she is pretty much at the end of her blooming time and the colors are not so vivid, I think you can see the appeal is just wonderful. Again, this really wild dotted pattern on the sepals and petals, on this really beautiful yellow background, which now looks rather green, and the beautiful lip with that bright spot of magenta. Very similar if you think about it to the Cattleya, but it really doesn't look similar. So even though this orchid is just beautiful, it does not have a fragrance for me this month. And it's weird because this is one of those orchids renowned for her fragrance. Everybody's pretty much in love with the fragrance. It's supposed to be citrusy, perhaps. No, not for me. I do detect something very sweet like an odontoglossum, sweet plastic type of thing, but that's just not the full potential. I'm thinking, since this is the very first time this orchid blooms, it's just a faulty type of blooming, which I will talk more about. I have some orchids from the archive to show you. First blooms on orchids might lack certain features, and that's normal. It's a little sad because I was really expecting for this wonderful fragrance, which is lacking, and this orchid has been in bloom for the past month, so it has nothing to do with waiting for the blooms to develop the fragrance. Also, it's sitting in a very bright location, receives direct sunshine through the sheer curtain, nothing to do with the sun either. It is, however, the very first blooming of this orchid. When I purchased it, I don't remember it having any remains of all flower spikes, and this is the new pseudobulb which bloomed. You can see it looks pretty good, but the previous bulb, she tried to bloom there actually, and the flower spike didn't develop. It was looking pretty abnormal, so I cut it. I didn't want the orchid to stress, but this year she bloomed nice. In the past though, I don't see previous spikes, but trust me when I tell you this orchid was almost a goner. So maybe the stress combined with the fact that she's a young orchid, even though she doesn't look that way, maybe that's why I don't have much of a fragrance on my orchid. But still, the flowers are gorgeous indeed. They're not very big, but they're not small either. Maybe like a typical odontoglossum hybrid, bigger than a Wilsonara in any case. I do really love her, just slightly sad about the fragrance, but hey, there's always next year. Next up, Brasiliorchis schunkeana. It was formerly known as Maxillaria schunkeana, the black maxillaria. And this year, like last year, again, I don't feel like my little flower is all that black or all that dark. Yes, it is supposed to be a dark purple color, but especially in natural light, it just looks very purple. Nothing, absolutely nothing like the Monera Millennium Magic that we had in bloom last year, and that one could pass as black. If you looked at it from a certain angle, there was no purple in sight. This one is pure purple. I don't know what to believe. I don't know if the pictures on the internet just don't reflect the proper color, or if this is an individual with a certain color, maybe a more purple color. That could be a possibility. But there we have it. She's in bloom yet again with a tiny little flower. She takes, or actually took her time to bounce back, because this is a plant which really enjoys water and doesn't really enjoy heat so much, at least in my experience, but she's okay, she's pulling through. So I'm happy she bloomed, and I'm hoping for better results from now. You can see the bloom is really tiny, but the color, I was just expecting it to be darker. There is no fragrance, nothing that I can detect, and she's a really charming little orchid. Just, I don't know, maybe pictures elevated my expectations, but there we have it. I would not call this an almost black orchid. She's definitely purple. Let me know in a comment below, do you have a schunkeana which actually can pass as black in certain lights? Mine definitely cannot, not in a million years. Maybe it's an individual type of thing. Maybe this particular one just has a color variation. We know that's possible with maxillarias. Maybe this is one of those cases as well. Just let me know in a comment below. Maybe I can buy another one and see if that one is darker. Next up, I hope you're not bored of her, the Phalaenopsis Ballina. This is yet again a different flower. We have another bud coming. This is a sequential bloomer. So sequential bloomers are always entered in the contest as long as they bloom. But here we have her with yet another really super fragrant bloom. I'm just so proud of my little girl. And because somebody was a little horrified about the leaves, I'm guessing many of you don't know the history of this orchid. She has the orchid flag virus. Check it down below in the description. It's not such a bad virus as the Oncidium ring spot and the Cymbidium mosaic, but one of the side effects of the virus is pitted leaves, which tend to fall faster and yellow faster, and that's why I kept this leaf. Some of her leaves will shed faster, and yeah, that is that. I was contemplating with you guys at some point if I should get a replacement, but this is actually a very vigorous orchid, and I'm hoping in time the virus will subside. With good care and with her immune system, I'm hoping she will overcome it. But yeah, that's the story, that's the scoop. That's why the leaves look like they do and have the pitting. And it's all due to spider mites which carry the virus. But anyway, it really doesn't appear to affect the blooming. And let's not forget her cousin, the Phalaenopsis violacea. Yet again, you might be sick of her, but this is a totally new bloom, and she's opening up another one. So I won't talk about them too much. The Ballina has a fruity scent. The violacea has a sweet cinnamony scent to it. Both of these orchids are summer blooming species, but there we have it. Violacea in bloom once again. I'm not gonna insist on them because you already know them for the past 3 months. Next up, one of the dendrobiums that got damaged in the storm. This is the Blue Happiness, the orchid which I purchased without roots, which went through this amazing journey of recovery, and I could not wait to make a video on it. And now it's not gonna happen, but it's gonna happen next year. So the Blue Happiness bloomed on a new cane and the older cane, and it had 2 beautiful flower spikes, which you know, this is whatever remained of it. Many of the flowers were just completely removed from the flower spikes. But the color of this orchid is really, really pretty. I cannot say it's blue. Blue orchids, not very common. They're mainly purple, or a shade of purple which can pass as blue. And the Blue Happiness, don't imagine it's blue, it's purple, but it is really, really pretty. The flowers are kind of tiny in comparison to other dendrobiums, which we'll see probably next time, because not all of them are in full bloom. They don't have a fragrance, but they're absolutely charming. And this guy looked so pretty. If you can imagine, had a little pom-pom here and a little pom-pom there. It looked so pretty. It looked wonderful. And I just realized something. No, this is not the one with an old growth and a new growth in bloom. Both of these growths are brand new. This guy has 2 directions of growth. I think I am confusing him with the Purple Happiness. Yeah, we're gonna see that one next month though. But yeah, no, these are 2 new growths. It has 2 directions of growth. And there we have him, and I think he absolutely deserves your love and your vote. Next up, my actual pride and joy, the Polar Fire. It used to have its flower spike right here, and it was just completely broken off, and a few flowers fell, but that's okay. I put it in water, as you guys have seen in my yesterday's video, but the flowers are just wilting, which is very strange, because usually these types of dendrobiums are very good cut flowers. Something's not working right. I might have to cut the flower spike once again and try to make it absorb water. So I don't know if the show will be great for me this year, even in a vase. This guy's just not having it. But we actually did make a video on this guy just a few days ago. It was the story of my first ever dendrobium, and you're gonna see him there. He used to have 16 buds, which is a pretty huge number for the Polar Fire. That's why I was pretty happy about him. But what to do? However, I discovered that this guy has a well, I hope it's a flower spike developing here. And I noticed it on the day of the storm, so it's not as a consequence of losing that spike. I might get another spike on the other cane. This is the older cane, and I see something developing. So maybe he was preparing a second flower spike, and that just makes him even better, because imagine if he's prone to producing multiple flower spikes, which Dendrobium phals are usually prone to. Yeah, the show will be super great, so who knows? Maybe next year or maybe sooner I'm gonna have an even better show from this guy. But anyway, once again, he does deserve your votes. Next up, another wonderful Dendrobium Phalaenopsis type. This is Banana Chocolate. Now, all of these orchids, I mentioned the commercial name. They probably have a different registered name for this particular one. I don't know what that name is. This guy actually lost a few flowers, and him as an orchid, he's still recovering. And I'm sorry for the darkness. I had to adjust the exposure because he has really light colored flowers. This is an orchid that I had a few years ago, not this particular one, and I wanted to have it again because I just find this contrast absolutely yummy. It's pretty much like banana and chocolate, although this is pretty purple, but I can totally see why the store named it that way. This one actually has a little bit of a fragrance, and when I had him the first time, it really smelled like bananas. Now I'm not sure. It smells slightly sweet. It's nothing very noticeable or overpowering or anything. It's just there, and I don't know if it smells like bananas. It's slightly sweet, it's slightly something. I'm not gonna raise your hopes high, but he doesn't smell like dust, let's put it like that. The banana chocolate produces tiny flowers, as you can see. The biggest flower dendrobium that I have is my white one, but he's not in full bloom yet. However, this guy can produce a multitude of flowers, just like the polar fire. When I purchased my previous one, he did have more flowers than this, so he can put on a show. Mine is just recovering. He had a little bit of issues with spider mites. I have some spotting on the leaves, but that's okay. It's gonna be fixed, hopefully, next year. He is, however, a pretty vigorous grower, and the blooms are absolutely lovely, although this is absolutely not the full potential of this orchid. Next dendrobiums we're gonna see are not in the best of shapes. This is the Velvet Melody, and he's been hit by the hail, sadly, so we lost one of the petals here. We lost one of the flowers, and yeah, here and there a few more scars. But anyway, this guy, you know him for a lot of time. He's been in my collection for a lot of time, and this year he put on the best pseudobulb he ever did, sadly. He was a little bit of a guinea pig, and when I moved my orchids outside, I burned all of the leaves, except this one. So he's leafless at the moment, sadly, but that's okay. Denphals are absolutely okay with that, as I learned. He's growing a new growth, which got hit a little bit here as well. Oh, okay. So you can see this one is broken. The leaf is broken, but it's still hanging on. There we have it. I'm guessing I do have some damaged orchids that I just missed. What to do? It's not a whole lot, but yeah, this leaf got hit by hail, but she's gonna be okay. What I wanted to tell you, actually, because I lost a lot of leaves and because he was stressed a little bit because of that, roots are still good. He did start to produce a new growth earlier than the others, so that's great. Flower-wise, though, it's not the greatest. If everything goes right all the time, things get boring, right? Maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to find courage now, but there we have it. The Velvet Melody, pretty old dendrobium in my collection. He had a really good year, just a lot of bad luck. And lastly, a pink NoID Dendrobium Phalaenopsis, which I purchased pretty recently, and it didn't have so many flower spikes. The problem with this guy is, oops, yep, he got hit by hail too. So as you can see, I have a lot of streaking. Streaking on flowers can happen because either of virus or because of stress. And look at this guy. See how shriveled some of these canes are? Some of them are bouncing back. I repotted this orchid when I shouldn't have, when he already had flower spikes. I left them there just to see what happens, and he is slowly bouncing back, but it's really interesting that the flowers are streaky. No, he's not virused. I have no reason to believe he's virused. And as he was in his old pot, the flower spikes developed really nicely, and he developed really nicely. I have a little bit of sunburn, again, guinea pig, it's okay. That didn't affect him. However, I just kept him to make this video. Now I'm gonna cut away all of these flower spikes and work on establishing this orchid, which will not be hard because he is a vigorous grower. But I will also make another video with him, which probably I will post tomorrow or the day after, with flower ailments, because the storm actually created some ailments, which I never filmed before, so yay, silver lining, not really. Anyway, so he will be included. Bottom line, the stripes you see, they're not natural, they were not supposed to happen. He's just very stressed. And you can see, I mean, the flowers don't look like they're properly shaped anyway, so no point in holding on to them. You can see he's very shriveled. But yeah, that's why the stripes are there. But there we have him, my NoID Pink Dendrobium. He's a very vigorous and prolific orchid, that's for sure. So I'm looking forward to the future blooms. And there we have it. These were the orchids in bloom for this month. Don't forget to vote for your favorite one down below in the description. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. You know the drill. Like or dislike this video below. Subscribe for more orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and orchids in bloom. Turn on notifications if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video. And if you're curious about what pots and media I use, just check the description down below. Once again, I list everything there. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!